So briefly, my name's Tanya. I work at Coleman Advocates for Children and Youth in San Francisco, and we're a member-driven, community-based organization. We do parent and youth organizing and policy advocacy around the issues that low-income and working-class families of color in San Francisco are struggling with. So that includes fighting for better schools, fighting against displacement, gentrification, and for affordable housing, and fighting for sort of a fair share of city budget services that our families need. And other things, but those are our priorities. So, so I want to start with some of, so my frame on this is to you as organizations and people working in agencies, and kind of like some things that to be thinking about in this period, and how to be thinking about your organizational roles in this period. And so I'm just going to start with some general comments about that, and then share with you a little bit of the story of how Coleman actually went through an organizational change and transformation, to give you an idea or a window into how our organizations can shift to respond to new times. So I think the most important thing, and maybe for lack of saying something obvious, this is a moment of history where it's always important, but it's urgent that in this moment we all put the folks that we serve or the folks that we organize front and center in our consciousness. So whatever your organizational goals say, whatever your job description says, whatever your like strategic plan says, or whatever the hell those things say, sort of put those like right here, and then but look and directly talk to the folks you are working with, and what is their reality right now, right? What are the actual current conditions that our communities are facing? What do they really need? What are they really up against in this coming period? And that basic assessment should be guiding our work, right? Our organization should be existing to address our communities. I mean, I know that's an obvious statement, but you know, we're going into a period where there's some organizations are not going to survive. Some organizations are going to dramatically reduce their capacity. If we want to, you know, if you need to feel like you want to justify your existence, you need to be truly meeting the needs of our folks, right? And as an organization, need to be developing a true analysis of what your community is up against. What are and not just sort of, oh, our folks are losing jobs, but you know, in your local community, who are the people who are making your community's situation more difficult? Who are the forces? What are the banks doing? What are city government? You know, what's really happening in your community? Make sure you have a clear assessment of what our folks are really up against. So our organizations have to be really responding to the times, simply not going on as business as usual. So I think we know that, but that's a really, so, you know, if you're an organization that's big and you have a board of directors that are really stuck on their plan, like, there needs to be some internal organizing about shifting your plan. Because these are just unprecedented times, right? These are, and there's no one who, in any plan that you made, you know, even 2 years ago, could possibly have taken into account the scale of the economic crisis that we're seeing now. So one, I just want to give you the courage and push to challenge whatever your current plans are. Second, this period really requires strategic thinking. You know, there's the nonprofit, you know, model of like strategic plans and all that. That's important. But strategic thinking in that really, like I said, is shaped by your core values, your vision for the kind of community and society that you want, and how are you and your organization best positioned to really strategically improve the conditions in your community. And to think really creatively and outside the box about how to make that happen. It may require you to do things in ways that you've never done before. It may require, and I think in terms of a movement building model, one of the most important pieces of that is that we have to begin developing much stronger alliances with one another. So the corporate model of that would be to say we need to start doing consolidations and mergers. But I think the movement building version of that is that we need to form much closer alliances around our shared values. So if there are 3 organizations in San Jose who work with the same immigrant community and share values and are all struggling with resources, and that community is facing, you know, layoffs and reductions in services, those 3 organizations need to get together. They need to together and have a plan together. They need to do share staff training together. They need to do resource development together. They need to do political work together. We cannot afford to be our little isolated nonprofit. I think we all know that, but to make that happen requires some really intentional planning and conversations with the folks in our different communities. So, and I think that another piece of that is that in this period, we all need to be really deepening our relationships within our own organization and in our communities. So it's like Phil was saying, sometimes in crisis, people kind of want to pull in, hunker down. And I think there is a piece of that that's obviously natural, but I guess the part of that I'm recommending that is a little bit of that is this is a period when people are going to have to make more sacrifices, when people are going to suffer more, that the quality of our communities and the quality of our relationships with each other is going to matter more than ever. We have to, you know, actually care about each other. We actually have to, not to be too touchy-feely, but in our organizations, if you got beef, like this is the moment to, like, you know, squash the beef. You know, if there's community politics that are getting in the way, I mean, this is really a moment to really deepen our relationships with each other, because we're going to need each other more than ever before in this coming period. And part of that deepening of relationships is, instead of just talking the talk around solidarity and, you know, Black-Brown alliance building and those different issues around building deeper, more connections between our communities, this is the moment to make that all real. So if you are working in a you know, monoracial or monolingual organization, if you're only working with Vietnamese folks, or you're only working with Latino folks, or only working with folks from El Salvador, or whatever it is, this is the moment to stop doing that. And not meaning stop only doing that, but to really think about how are you contributing in your organization to alliance building within our communities. So just like I said, we're going to need each other individually. Our communities are going to need each other more than ever. Unity, I mean, it's corny, but it's true. It's going to be really true in this period. I mean, even in the local context of San Francisco and budget cuts, I mean, it's so easy to divide and conquer. It's going to get easier and easier as more layoffs happen, as more people are forced out of their homes, as more services are cut, as more schools face layoffs and incredible, you know, closures and all these kinds of crises. The pitting of our communities against each other will intensify, and it's already pretty bad. And we all know it's really bad. So we each need to take that personal responsibility and organizational leadership to push our organizations to take the next step. To actually figure out, is there an organization that is similar to mine, that is working in a different community that we can build with? Whatever it looks like, this is the moment to do that. So those are just a few initial things. So I want to share with you, Coleman Advocates is an organization that has existed for more than 30 years, and we kind of came out of the early 1970s sort of child advocacy movement, and it was a mostly white professional social work led movement across the country, and the model was sort of, we are really concerned about poor children. And poor children can't vote, they can't speak for themselves, and so we're going to be the advocates to speak for them and to ensure that they get better justice and better services in the world. And that model was very effective in many ways and made a lot of victories all over the country. And when I came to Coleman in around 2000, they had just had some experience of expanding upon that model and actually started bringing in the young people of themselves, the families, the parents themselves, and got to get training on how to speak for themselves. Okay, so they had Coleman had kind of moved beyond a traditional advocacy model or direct service model of we're the professionals who know best and we're gonna speak for others, and had started engaging people. And there had been some real successes. The young people had said, we want health clinics, and they'd gotten trained and organized and supported to actually win more than $1 million in the city budget annually to start these wellness centers in their high schools. And there'd been some like really exciting victories. And that's why I wanted to join, because I thought that was really exciting emerging work. And what ended up happening over a few years, eventually I became the executive director there, and the contradiction became too big to sustain, that we were an organization that had gained influence and had resources in the community to speak out for low-income families, low-income children, but the agenda that we were moving wasn't driven by those folks. It wasn't decided. So if I could have, as a Coleman staff person, I could have said, you know what, I think juvenile justice is really important. I think, you know, with CJ, and we're gonna go and we're gonna fight for better conditions in our juvenile hall. I think that's really super important. I got to decide. How cool. The problem was, did the community get to decide? Who got to say what the policy should be? Who got to even to say whether or not that was the priority, right? So, and those issues kept coming up and kept coming up over time. And so we decided to go through a strategic planning process to really address some of those issues. And I want to share with you, just imagine for a moment, I'm a new African-American executive director. I've taken the helm of this organization that had been run by a sort of middle-class professional white woman for over 25 years. And I'm saying we should be more community-driven. How can we do that? And we have a big meeting in Marin, a retreat. There's 60 people there. It's our board. It's the young people and the parents who had been involved. Incredibly racially diverse, so it's folks from 65-year-old well-to-do white folks all the way to 15-year-old black kids from Baby Hunters Point in the same room having really deep conversation about what kind of organization do we really want to build? What do we really believe about social change? Do we really believe in democracy? Do we actually believe that people have a right to participate? Do we believe that people have to have college educations in order to go and speak at City Hall? Like, and so all these debates started happening in the organization. And, do we believe that the board and the staff should share power with community members who are, untrained, maybe haven't even graduated from high school? Do we believe that? And those conversations and our willingness as an organization to have those conversations and sort through long-held assumptions in the organizations, things that some folks were even defensive about, right? Because they had personally been carrying those philosophies and those ideas. Our willingness to engage in those conversations was totally transformative for our organization. And what ended up happening was we ended up moving to a membership-based model where the families themselves join, set the agenda, decide the priorities, lead the campaigns, and staff no longer have the power to do that. And that, I think, is, and because we had the deep conversations all along and engaged everyone in that process, I have members of my board who were proud members of Coleman Advocates for Children and Youth 10 years ago, 15 years ago under the old model, who today are still proud members of Coleman Advocates for Children and Youth under the new model, because they've been convinced that our community should build power and have the right to speak up for themselves. So I think moving 3 years forward, so we made that decision, we transformed our organizational culture, had a new staffing structure, and really massive internal transformation. Had to get some new funding, and now here we are 3 years later in this incredible economic crisis, right? And we are revisiting our plan. And some of the things that we've been talking about that we want to share with you about, in addition to the things I started with, about how we should be responding in this crisis is, one, that this is a unique opportunity. This crisis presents, Steve talked about all the challenges, for our communities to finally start questioning some of the underlying dominant ideas that have been running the country for really a couple generations. The ideas about that the free market is the best way to organize, things that the business people always know best. You know how they're always saying like nonprofits should act more like businesses. So now I think that's pretty much under question. So it's an opportunity for us to start talking to our communities about, well, what do we believe? If it's not the business model, if it's not the for-profit model that is the best example of how things happen in the world, what is? It's an opportunity to have really deep conversations with our community members about, well, why are there layoffs? How did this crisis happen? What are the real causes of our community problems? And I think people, in my experience, you know, everyone from high school students to parents who are asking the whys. So it's an opportunity for us to join, to really facilitate the conversation about the why and really sharpen the political analysis of everyday people in our communities. What do you believe about what our schools should be doing? What kind of opportunities should we be demanding from our school system? Should schools actually be a place of opportunity for our young people so that they can actually go get good jobs? Or is the point of schools just to like warehouse our kids until they go to prison, right? This is a really important moment to ask those questions. And to build a commitment to a much broader set of public services once this crisis has passed. So our feeling is that this is the moment to fight even more boldly for investments from the public sector, knowing that some of those demands will not get met, but to increase the sense of entitlement of our communities and the sense of self-determination that the public sector is actually a place, government is actually a place, with limitations, of course, to meet some of our needs for housing, for childcare, for after-school programs, for rental assistance, for the things that our communities need. This is a time to really be demanding those things. And then through this next period, as we have those conversations, when we get to the other side, we will have thousands of people who have been mobilized about those demands. Now, and if we've done that in a way where we've done that while building alliances with each other, while truly engaging our community members and building their leadership and allowing their voices to be prioritized and highlighted, then we will move through this period in a movement building, with movement building energy and be in a stronger position actually once this crisis is over to demand even more and to have more justice and more opportunity for our folks. But I'll just end there.